Allahu, 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 Allah. Allahu, 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 Allah. Allahu, Allah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. You're listening to the Sacred Study Show on Inspire FM. I'm your host Waqas Mirza, and we're joined by Sheikh Noorud-deen Rashid. Today we just want to quickly talk about the importance of studying Fard Ain knowledge, which is an obligation upon each and every Muslim. So with that, I will hand it over to Sheikh Noorud-deen.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Rabbi Yassir wa ya Kareem. So let's begin with a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This hadith is in Abu Ya'la, in Bazzar, in Tabarani, Ibn Majah, and many hadith collections. It is sound according to some of the great scholars of hadith, including Imam al-Suyuti, Imam al-Mizzi, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, طلب العلم فريضة على كل مسلم. Seeking knowledge is an obligation on every Muslim. Now, this is a very, very important concept and something which sadly is not understood by most Muslims. Most Muslims understand that it's obligatory to pray Salah 5 times a day, obligatory to fast in the month of Ramadan. Even, mashallah, most Muslims understand that for the man of the house, it's obligatory to go out and work and provide for the family. There are a lot of obligations that, alhamdulillah, we understand. Not all of them, okay? But there are, main obligations. A lot of the main obligations are understood. This, sadly, is not one of them. This, sadly, in our Muslim communities, people do not understand that. Just like the other things I pointed out are obligatory, seeking knowledge is also an obligation. And this is not something that, this sheikh said or that sheikh said, or they've extrapolated from Quran and Hadith, which is obviously also important. When something's not explicitly mentioned in Quran and Hadith but extrapolated from it, it's still important to act upon that. But when something is explicit, then it's so much stronger, okay, and more likely to be agreed upon by all scholars. And this is amongst those things. This is clearly obliged by the Prophet ﷺ, that every single Muslim must study the deen, okay, must seek knowledge. So it's very important for us as an ummah and as a community to take this to heart. These are not my words. These are not this sheikh's words or that sheikh's words. These are the words of our Prophet Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is an obligation. It is incredibly important for people to understand this. This mentality people have that, seeking knowledge is for the imams in the masajid, the muftis, the sheikhs, the people teaching in madrasa, for example, or sometimes it's for children. Okay? No, the hadith is very clear. Every Muslim has to have knowledge. There's certain fundamental, basic aspects of knowledge that every single Muslim has to have. Okay? And this is important. And it's also important to point out that that's not every single science. Okay? It doesn't mean every single Muslim needs to be a scholar and an expert in every subject in Islam. No. The scholars, they detailed this out. Okay, they detailed out that there are certain subjects which are considered Fard Ain, and they tend to mention 3 and sometimes 4, depending on, with the 4th one I'll go into a little bit of detail regarding it. But they tend to say these subjects which are obligatory at least at a basic level for people to study. Okay, but study doesn't mean here say, oh, I heard this, I heard that. No, study means to actually sit down with a teacher and to study a classical or an authoritative text in that subject. So what do they say? They say the first of these is Aqidah or Ilm al-Tawheed, okay, the Muslim creed, the science of Islamic beliefs. This is an obligation. Then number 2, they tend to say Fiqh, okay, Islamic law. Islamic law, of all of these 4 I'm going to mention, it is the broadest of them. Islamic law with regards to personal ibadat, okay, Tahara, Salah, fasting, Zakah, Hajj, other aspects as well, buying and selling, marriage and these kind of things, inheritance law. This is quite broad and it covers many different aspects. Also, they speak about tazkiyah, Okay, purification, spiritual purification. There are aspects of Islamic spirituality that are obligatory for one to study. Things like the diseases of the heart and how to purify the diseases of the heart. Often the sins of the limbs, you know, what is it haram for a person to look at? What is it haram for a person to listen to? What is it haram for a person to speak or say? These are covered in it as well. And the fourth one, which not all scholars mention this, is tajweed. Okay, why don't all scholars mention this? Because in those communities where, you know, people can, usually Arab communities, where they can recite Quran without major mistakes, even if they haven't specifically studied the science of tajweed, then that's not an obligation then, because the obligation is to be able to recite Quran without making errors that change the meaning. I would say, in my experience, in non-Arab communities, it is definitely an obligation to study tajweed, and often in our Arab communities it can be as well. Okay, but especially for us, people of the subcontinent, we've got a bigger problem here, which is where, you know, at least the Urdu alphabet is quite similar to the Arabic one in terms of, you know, its physical appearance, but in terms of sound it's different, and a lot of people, you know, when it comes to reading Arabic, they do the same, they make the same sounds as they do for the Urdu, and that will completely change the meaning at times. So these are usually the sciences that the scholars tend to put down as fard ayn, personally obligatory. Other subjects are also very, very important, but these are the most important, and these are obligatory. And when a person studies the deen, which should be all of us, these are the ones that we should really be starting with.